Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Augustina Nami, and I am a senior lecturer here at the University of Ghana Department of Social Work. I'm here with these people here, and later on I'll let them introduce themselves. So we are here on behalf of Ghana Somubi Dwumadie, and we are going to be talking to you about lessons and experiences in delivering accessible social behavior change. So Ghana Somubi Dwumadie is a UK-funded project, and one of their main aims is just to ensure that stigma and discrimination against persons with disabilities is reduced using social behavior change interventions. So in 2021, Ghana Somubi Dwumadie awarded 5 grassroots organizations grants so that they could develop and implement social behavior change interventions. So we are here today to learn about some of their experiences in developing and implementing social and behavior change interventions. But my task here is to set the stage so that the discussions can flow. So I will be looking at some of the key elements of stigma reduction using SBC, social behavior change. And key among them is user-led approaches. Basically, when we talk about user-led approaches, we are talking about, in this case, persons with disabilities who drive the whole intervention processes. So from the development of the materials, development of the intervention, to the implementation of the interventions. Key among the user-led approaches is co-creation. And when we talk about co-creation, also in the same vein, so here our grantees and their stakeholders were involved in creating materials for stigma reduction, including posters, jingles, and they also developed positive change language or positive language. And one thing that I want to mention here in terms of co-creation has to do with the involvement of persons with various disabilities. So you name them, those with hearing impairment, visual impairment, mobility impairment, and persons with mental health conditions. So they were all involved in the entire process. And another good thing is that pictures of persons with disabilities were used for the posters. And there's a projection of one of the pictures here. So in one of the communities, one of the community members told us that, you see a poster of somebody you know in your community having a disability, and the person is telling you that, don't call me by this name, or don't do this to me. If you do it to me, this is how I feel. So that is really, really, really powerful. Another key to user-led approaches has to do with engaging persons with disabilities as inclusive ambassadors or as champions. So here you have persons with disabilities who live their experiences, who are expert knowers of their experiences, and they are engaged in duty bearers, and they're telling duty bearers that, hey, please listen, this is how we feel. And then they advocate and tell duty bearers that we want you to address these issues. So that is about user-led approaches. So now we all know that language is powerful. So another main element of our SBC interventions has to do with language. Language is powerful. Language can make, language can break. So we all also know traditionally the tags, labels that have been given to persons with disabilities. People call some persons with disability crippled and so on and so forth. And when I checked, if you say something is crippled, it means the thing is completely damaged, that nothing can be done about it. Some say deaf and dumb. You say dumb, it means the person is foolish. But people who have hearing impairment, they are not foolish people. So there was a need to talk about language. And one thing we have realized is that we have all been socialized to calling these names unknowingly, tagging persons with disabilities with all sorts of names. So one of our grantees engaged in developing a language guide that will give positive terminologies or alternatives so that the public can have alternatives to call persons with disabilities. If you are saying we shouldn't call them cripples or deaf and dumb, what should we do? So that happened, and we would throw more light on that shortly. Another key element of the stigma reduction interventions that Ghana Somubi Dwumadie and their grantees embarked on has to do with the development of accessible materials. And key to this is brainstorming, pre-testing, and validation. They are the three major processes that accessible materials will have to go through. And I also want to mention again here that involvement of persons with disabilities, all forms of disabilities and those with mental health conditions, is also key. So here you have persons with disabilities, you have all stakeholders coming together, they are disagreeing, they are negotiating, and they are agreeing on the message that should be shared to the public. Everybody's on the table discussing. So the material or the final product is something that they all accept and they all own. They show ownership of it, and acceptability is very, very, very high because of this process. And last but not the least, see, if you want to tell the public what to do, if you are creating awareness, they should understand the message, right? So the messages were also developed in local languages. So the jingles, the posters, and all of that were developed in local languages. I must say that the inclusion of persons with disabilities in all of these processes gives them voice and is also very, very empowering. So ladies and gentlemen, my task here was to set the stage. And I think I have set the stage. Now, I am going to turn to the experts here. They are going to put flesh on the sketch that I have given you. So help me welcome my panelists.
Thank you very much.
So I'll have them introduce themselves so that I don't want to leave anything out. So from my extreme left.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naomi. I'm Joseph Mensah, Community-Based Rehabilitation Advisor for Ghana Somubi Dwumadie. And for the social behavior change interventions or component of the program, I must first of all thank Site Savers. They played a major role in that, and also with the support of Basic Needs Ghana in the granting mechanisms. Thank you. Let me pass on to my...
Hi, thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Francis Asson, and I work for Voice Ghana, now African Disability Institute, which is a grantee of the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Asson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gladys Damalin, and I'm representing the Executive Director for Hope for Future Generations. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. So you can tell that the panel here is so diverse. They've all been engaged in social behavior change interventions, and in our case, the aim is to reduce stigma and discrimination against persons with disabilities. So Joseph, you have been involved in the development and implementation of SBC interventions. You've been involved with all the several grantees. So tell us a little bit about how co-creation strengthens social behavior change interventions.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. So as Madam Moderator rightly said, to reduce stigma and discrimination, you can't do without a social behavior change intervention. And one approach that Ghana Somubi Dwumadie used was the co-creation approach. Because without co-creation approach, as I said, there is no way you can reduce stigma, and then let me put it again, you can reduce disability stigma and then discrimination. So what is co-creation? Well, for Ghana Somubi Dwumadie, I think co-creation is a collaborative and inclusive approach where we involved all key stakeholders. So if I talk about all key stakeholders, I mean including people with disabilities and then people with mental health conditions. And what we did was, in terms of designing, planning of the messages, visuals, and activities, we included them right from the word go, right from day one. And also, in addition to that, in implementing the project activities, they were all included, all stakeholders. We didn't leave them out. Now, the co-creation approach that we took, brought us a lot of benefits. And some of them, I'll just mention few. Some of the benefits that accrued to the project had to do with, one, understanding of the community context and then their needs, because we are talking about stigma and then discrimination, and also using social behavior change. So you need to understand the local community context and their needs. And bear in mind that this program was nationwide. If I say nationwide, we implemented this program nationwide. So you needed to zero down on specific context of communities and then their needs. And in understanding this, it also helped us to tailor solutions, to customize solutions that will meet the needs of those local people or the local communities that we were implementing our activities in. And another benefit also had to do with increased ownership and engagement, because we used co-creation approach. So it increased ownership and then engagement. But because of that, I wouldn't dwell, maybe if there are questions. And then again, in terms, it also brought about adaptability and then flexibility. Because as I said, it's co-creation. And you don't, as a program, we don't sit and then do, but we involve all. So there was some kind of adaptability and then flexibility. And somebody may ask, so in all these, were there some challenges?
Yeah,
yes.
Yes.
There
That's
were.
what I wanted to ask you. Were there any challenges, and
Yes.
did that affect the interventions in any way?
Well, there were some challenges, but it did not really affect the program or the activities. The challenges were because it was a co-creation, we used a co-creation approach. So each time that we plan of implementing an activity, again, it has to go around. All has to come on board. And especially with development of the materials, we had to pre-test. And the pre-test prolonged some of the activities. Called pre-testing, although we involved all, by the end of the day, in developing the materials and then posters, you have to go back to the communities for them to really take a look at what you have done,
Okay,
and then
so
feed into.
So long and
the,
short,
so
did
pre-testing.
that delay your interventions in any way?
No,
Okay.
it didn't.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to Madam Moderator.
Okay, so now we move on to Francis Eshon.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
So for you actually developed a language guide. Can you show it to us? Your organization, yes. Can you tell us a little bit about the processes involved?
Right. Thank you. So my organization is reducing stigma and discrimination against people with disabilities and people with mental health conditions in the Volta and Otier regions. And we began the project by the establishment of a language guide for more like providing alternative terminologies to communities, because we all know that these communities are using terminologies that are really negative in describing people with disabilities. So there is a need to provide alternatives for them. And in doing this, we brought on board 172 stakeholders, including traditional leaders, religious leaders, people with disabilities, users, caregivers, parents, and language experts, to more like a brainstorm and agree on a brainstorm, discuss, and agree on terminologies that can be used for people with disabilities. And in this process, we also pre-tested the terminologies to make sure that this really resonates well with people with disabilities in describing them. So in a way, we're able to provide alternatives to communities. And we started using this guide now in sensitizing communities about the use of the positive terminologies in describing people with disabilities, and at the same time, building capacity for media practitioners about how they can really use positive disability terminologies in their reportage. We are also using it to raise awareness to churches, the community debates, mosques, all gears to really using positive disability terminologies for their respective, in their respective communities. And at the same time, to religious leaders and the traditional leaders are not left out in this. So therefore, because in a way, they are seen as more like a part of the problem, so to speak, in quotes. Or they are seen as perpetrators of this stigma and discrimination. But as a result of all this intervention, we are happy to really note that the changes started coming in, because now traditional authorities and religious leaders are also joining us in promoting the use of positive disability terminologies in the communities. Media houses are promoting this as well on their airwaves, and then people with disability themselves are attesting to the fact that now they are calling them with positive terminologies in their respective languages. And these languages are in the Ewe language, Ewe, the Twi, and Likpankpan. Likpankpan is for the cucumbers. These are our project areas. And so they also confirm to how they feel so valued and respected as a result of using these positive terminologies or language, so to speak, for them, instead or in place of the derogatory names that they normally use for them. And these are some of the things that are started coming in from the use of the guide.
Yeah. So Francis, I mean, evidence from Ghana Somubi Dwumadie, information that they have, indicates that even Market Women, Motor Riders Association, so many other organizations are using Department of Social Work. Can you tell us a little bit about all of those?
Certainly, because of time. But as you rightly said, the guide is meant for the general public. So what we do is using it to sensitize or to raise awareness to people, government institutions, social welfare, Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, market women, yes, as you mentioned, NCC, they are all part of this in our work. So NCC even took this up as part of their work in the Volta and Otil region. They have their own community outreach program, and then they are using the guide now as part of their work, sensitizing communities to use positive disability terminologies in the 3 languages that I mentioned, so that people with disabilities will really feel valued and then more respected in their community in place of all that has been happening all these days.
Thank you very much. Please, can you pass me the microphone? And we want to emphasize that we are only walking you through the approaches, you know, but as for the outcome, we have a lot of information. We have tons of information that will give you information about the impact of the interventions, but I want you to know the experiences, what we went through, and the lessons that we are learning. So now we go to Madam Gladys. So you are going to help us, understand, because one of the key elements has to do with persons with disabilities being or engaging as ambassadors, engaging as inclusive ambassadors and inclusive champions, and your organization did that. So tell us a little bit about the value of using persons with disabilities as inclusive ambassadors or champions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nami. The meaningful involvement of people with disability in the Ghana Somubi Dwumadie project was key to some of the successes that the project chalked, and also ensured that the project was sustained. What Hope for Future Generations did with funding support from Ghana Somubi Dwumadie project was to identify and then train these inclusion champions or train these people with disability as ambassadors or as inclusion champions. We provided them with the skills, the knowledge, the information, and the resources that they need to carry their work. And after we had empowered them with the relevant information and the skills, what they did was now to move into the communities and engage with community members. And what was the engagement about? The overall goal of the project was for us to reduce stigma and discrimination against people with disability. So they moved into the communities and they provided one-on-one education, group education, and they also made good use of the radio station to disseminate their information to community members. I must say that as a result of this intervention, we saw some changes at the community level. What were these changes? Parents and community members who were hiding their children and wards with disability were now coming out and seeking for help and support. We had adults with disability coming to say that now I want to be part of a self-help group so I can also contribute to the development of my community. And so it was a wonderful experience for some of us. And so the saying that nothing for us without us was really made meaningful in the implementation of this project. And I must say that the inclusion champions demonstrated this. And one keynote for us was that when inclusion champions or people with disability are empowered, I'm telling you, they are able. They are able. And so at the community level, people with disability realized that they couldn't do this all alone. They opened up to the community members, they collaborated with them, and they worked jointly to ensure that community members were educated and sensitized. And so for us, it's been good, it's been a wonderful project, and if you ask us to do it again, we will do it again with people living with disability.
So, Madam Gladys, please keep the microphone because I have a follow-up question for you. Okay, so your inclusive champions who were persons with disabilities, yes, they were able to do a lot. But in your opinion, if they were paired with persons without disabilities, do you think that they could have leveraged on the social capital that these individuals may have to further the work that you did, maybe bring more impact than what might have happened? So pairing, yes. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Moderator. I perfectly agree with you that if the inclusion champions were paired with other community members, they would have been able to achieve more. And let me say that at the community level, that is what exactly happened, because the inclusion champions themselves realized that they can't do it all alone. They need, for example, if you want to mobilize people for education, the inclusion champion cannot move from one home to the other to do that. But the community members were there to support in that regard. A quick one, just to say that the implementation of this very intervention came with some challenges. One of the main challenges that we had was the fact that the movement of the people with disability. You know, some of the communities are far off, and the use of public transport, where they would alight, the bus station, and even where the community is quite a distance. And some of them were physically challenged, and they had to walk quite a distance to these communities just to try to provide education to them. But overall, aside this challenge, I saw commitment and passion, and the fact that they overlooked all this challenge and went all out to ensure that this very intervention was successfully implemented. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Commitment and passion by persons with disabilities when they are given the opportunity. And that is why we are all here. And with one voice, asking the general public to give persons with disabilities the opportunity so that they can demonstrate what potentials God has endowed them with. So thank you all very much, all too soon. Our time has come to an end, and we need to conclude. Please, can you take us back to our PowerPoint slide? Okay. So we want to emphasize that for successful stigma reduction interventions, or for effective or stronger stigma reduction interventions, there's a need for us to think about co-creation, okay? Involving persons with disabilities, building their capacity of stakeholders, and so on and so forth. We also believe that that it's important to ensure that SBC materials are accessible to not just only persons with disabilities, but to the communities where the interventions are taking place. And also, the pre-testing, validation, bringing everybody on board, all of these are very strong elements for a successful stigma reduction intervention. So ladies and gentlemen, we want to call on you to try as much as possible to pick a lot of information from the Ghana Somubi Dwumadie. We have them set out there. I think we have whet your appetite enough, or you don't think so? So then when you get up, please grab some of them, because a lot of information is on there. We don't have time to tell you everything. We just give you a tip of the iceberg. Enter there and you get a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And this has been beautiful. And I like one thing the last submission said, like, persons with disability, if you empower them, they can conquer everything. And I feel like that's the same in my situation. Can you imagine this person standing in front of you, started reading and writing at the age of 17? And so they're dumb, you are lazy, you are blockheaded, and all those words were said to me. They actually killed my self-confidence. But per chances, I was able to go through school, and I'm here today. And if I tell you some of the wonderful work I've done across the world, you will be amazed and ask yourself, is it the same person that about 20-something years ago still couldn't even write Rosalind Abigail Chirenate, which is my name, okay? And so let's support us regardless of our challenges. It doesn't mean that we are blockheaded. We have many talents in us. We have so many things, and you heard from them. Didn't even say it's better than what they have presented.